Emily is one of my most favorite characters of all time from the TV series. Love her or hate her, she is a very strong female character, at least in my opinion. Heck, even in the hit era, which is, in this case, seasons 8 to 12, for those of you who don't know, they still did some good things with Emily. In fact, I'm willing to argue that Emily is the true MVP of the model part of the hit era, and maybe a handful of episodes in season 7. However, despite her popularity, she kinda sorta doesn't work timeline-wise. There is definitely a way to do it, but it does require a huge stretch of the imagination. It's a real shame that no one behind the scenes have thought to just make a backstory for Emily. But what about the model? What is my model about? Where is the whole Railway series part of it? Well, good thing I'm about ready to get to that right now. So get some popcorn and some soda, 'cause I cooked. Emily was one of the third batch of Sterling singles built in 1995, numbered 1005, to pull express passenger trains with the rest of her previous sisters. In 1914, World War I broke out, which saw more and more use out of Emily and her sisters, pushing them to near scrap iron. By October of 1916, Emily had been withdrawn from service, unable to keep up with the ever-demanding workloads of the Great Northern Railway. However, Emily and Number 1 from the Great Northern were spared from the cutter's torch. Number 1 went off to the National Railway Museum, while Emily was purchased by the War Department, being favored by the wounded soldiers for her smooth running. Until the end of World War I, Emily would primarily pull Army hospital trains for the War Department, but by the end of the war, she was no longer needed, thus deemed as Army surplus. Instead of being stored or scrapped, Emily was purchased by one of the veterans during the war that rode in her Army hospital trains, the retired veteran from Scotland, having an interest in steam locomotives and always wanted to have his own with his family. So he outright purchased Emily straight from the War Department with 2 coaches for a nominal sum. Emily would be used to take the retired veteran and his family around Britain for holidays, until one fateful day in 1967. The retired veteran obtaining an awful disease that couldn't be cured within their budget, and unfortunately meant selling Emily. However, the children of the retired veteran, now in their adulthoods and married, had an idea. What if they sold Emily to the Northwestern Railway, so not only would they get the money to cure their father, but also give Emily a third life, preserved, and pull revenue trains again, like she did on the Great Northern Railway. So the children immediately called the Fat Controller from the Northwestern Railway and told him about their situation and an engine he'd be interested to save. The Fat Controller agreed and bought Emily, giving the family the money they need to cure their father. Upon being purchased, this is where Emily was renamed from 1005 to Emily, named after the wife of the father who bought Emily from the War Department all those years ago. Emily now lives happily on the Northwestern Railway as the 12th steam engine, pulling local passenger trains up and down the main line, with visits from her old owners every now and then. The The part I found most fun with designing Emily was finding a basis to base my model off of. I really love her concept art from season 7, so I just went with it from here on out, with a few minor differences from my model and the concept art. Designing the parts on Fusion 360 just right was the hardest part, as I would have to go back and tweak the parts in case something wrong happened, or they just simply didn't fit, or were ugly. Sometimes I would have to repaint entire parts, or just go back and add paint to certain faces, just because I didn't like the look. Again, it looked ugly. A perfect example of my prejudice and opinion on something, or at least Emily looking ugly, would be pinstriping. I thought I was so clever to print pinstriping out of sticky back printer paper and then just cut it out. But no, it was ugly. However, my parents got me a Cricut cutter machine for Christmas last year, and it was so nice of them. Specifically, I got the Joy Extra series, and I made sure to put it to good use while making pinstriping for Emily. Already looking a heck of a lot better. I thought the only things I had to finish up now to complete Emily was her number 12, Northwestern Railway acronym, and her power output. Until... yeah, I wanted to motorize Emily. The motorization of Emily actually goes hand in hand with Thomas, believe it or not. Thomas was actually my first locomotive I had motorized, which some of you already know, and I have part 2 on the way. Now, motorizing Emily was actually more difficult than Thomas, and I will explain why in Thomas's part 2. Emily had no metal wheels on her main body, only the tender, so I had to fit LGB plunger pickups to her tender, which meant completely redesigning her tender to accommodate electric pickups. So fun fact, Emily's chassis had to go through like 4 different versions and is due for a 5th one, and I'll show you why. The reason why she sucks at going in reverse has to do with how the motor is settled in the chassis, disrupting how the gears mesh. And if I design a new chassis, I'll be able to rectify the problems, and I'll be one step closer to making and offering complete Sterling single kits on eBay. Probably. But if there's one thing I know I want to fix, is I want to replace these plastic wheels with metal ones and add pickups to the second lead wheel set. For now though, this is how Emily stands as she is. Now to show you another reason why it took so long to complete this project. Emily's coaches were made possible through old designs of the Annie and Clarabelle models I showed off all the way back at the new year. This old coach was going to be part of her train, but I quickly changed my mind as it looked very clunky and unfinished. After a few modifications and printing new roofs to resemble Emily's from the TV series, the coaches were all done. I did try to decorate my coaches to resemble those of the TV series, but as bogie coaches instead of 6-wheelers. Just like with Henrietta in my last video, I decided to give all my coaches proper interiors, and I think the final product turned out nicely. So fun fact, I actually forgot to add the gold rectangles on the sides of her coaches under the windows. So I got some spare vinyl tape from my Cricut cutter and then just stuck them on, and all good now. And just like that, while also taking into consideration that upgrades for Emily are inevitable, she is finally done. Yeah, baby! Emily is another welcome addition to my collection. I really love this model, even though it was a pain in the butt, all things considered. Thomas is still gonna get his video soon, but not yet. Annie and Clarabelle are still looking a little rough, so I'm gonna hold on to him for a while. Edward is drastically due for a rebuild and is unfortunately stuck in rebuild purgatory. Percy is another locomotive I really want, but he's still stuck in prototype purgatory. Toby is in dire need of a rebuild too. He's overscaled, too fragile, and poor Elsie is way too undersized. I'm also gonna ditch my old tradition of most voted to least voted for new builds, because I have no idea how to incorporate Nia into the Railway series, and it will be much easier to incorporate Rosie into the Railway series, so stay tuned for that. Before I leave, I want to give a huge shout out to Ben 10 Life. I love how he built Lionel customs. They are so fun to watch and inspire me to keep going on my own projects. So go show this man some support. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I don't just do G-Scale customs, I also do Trackmaster, Tomy, and a few other Thomas and train related toys too. See you all later, and I'm gonna go take a rest. No regrets! Peace out, everyone.